her tell us about her work.
Well, that made me feel really better than I'm thinking. Thanks, 'cause I want to send back the same thank you. This has been on my list to have a show here at K-Space. I came before the pandemic first with the Art Center in Barry Brown, and y'all have such a rich history with Bill Wilhelmy here, the Barry Brown, Greg Reuter,
Yes.
of course Louis Katz is kind of legendary, and so I just went, I'm getting a show, and I just kept bugging these people until I kept rose up in the radar, and this is perfect with all this clay going on this weekend, and I want to especially thank Michelle and the staff because they've made it. My work can sometimes be controversial, and Naked Clowns is a hard explanation. So, and there never was any, no, can't show that. I had total curatorial control on what I brought, and I picked work. They take me an incredible amount of time, and so I always think to myself, not very prolific. And to see everything at once is always good, because I go back now, it's kind of in a chronological order. These are the older pieces, the Rabbit and the Clown, the Beds, and then the two new kind of theater sets that I've done recently. And I was joking with Ray that I was gonna do I'm gonna tell y'all how I do them, maybe why and what, and then y'all are gonna ask me, what the hell are you thinking? So I'll ask y'all to participate too, and please do, throw questions out. I have a traditional background in clay. I always joke, I flunked chemistry at Blazes twice to get out of North Texas with a degree in ceramics, and then got out and went, well, I don't know how to do this, I don't have a kiln. I came out of school in the 70s. There was no kind of role model like the young artists coming out now. You've got a teacher who's working in a studio, and residencies, that wasn't something that we had when I came out of school. So it took me a couple of years. I fell back on, I had started out in advertising, so I went into graphic design for a couple of years to get some money, and a living. And I always, I had a young woman ask me once, she's a teacher when I was doing a residence, she goes, when did you know you had a plan? I went, a plan? What is that? Plan? 2 divorces and no plan. And if you're bringing something to the table and you've got luck, and being lucky is what I've been, because I went to Texas A&M with a husband. I worked in their ag department doing books on turtle eradication in ponds, and I did a book on the perfect pig butt for the Aggies. I was just desperate for something, and that's where I met Lyle Lovett and Robert Keane. They were young musicians. That was kind of the scene. But I read one ad for a maintenance man at Star of the Republic Museum, which is in Washington on the Brazos. It's about 30 minutes from A&M, and I begged my way in to the job, overqualified to be maintenance. But they had just gotten a big NEA grant for a survey on Texas clay. It was everything from Caddo Indian up to, that's the first I saw of Bill Wilhelmy's work. And the woman who'd gotten the grant to do the artist in residence got pregnant, and 6 months in, she was already having a child, and they were like, what are we gonna do? And I went, I have a ceramics degree, and an old potter's wheel, a kick wheel, and they gave me the grant. So for a year, I threw pots on this big old wonkin hand-built, my dad had built me the wheel, and it gave me, I was throwing functional ware. Marie kept her studio, so we were salt firing. I basically became her assistant at home, and throwing in porcelain, which I today can't imagine that I was doing. But I could sell what I was making in their gift shop, and that was it. That was how I got it now.
That became your plan.
That was the plan, there I was. Then the plan was to go to graduate school, and I had met a architect who was moving out to rural Fayetteville, which is halfway between Austin and Houston, and he said, I'll give you free studio space. I was on my way to being interviewed at UT to go back to get a master's degree. I never went, and 7 years later, I'm still in Fayetteville with a studio at home and an old building in town, and it was the perfect mix. And so I just started beating the bushes in that kind of triangle of Texas. The work went from, I have a short attention span, I'm always kind of and so to throw anything more than like 2 or 3 cups never appealed to me, so I pretty quickly went from drawings that I was doing, I started doing the tile work, and I don't know, at the point where I totally in my brain went from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional, and all the stories began to show up as these figures. Kept taking workshops. I worked with Jack Earl, who's passed away now, but was doing these big figurative, he had his own alter ego of Bill, which is his self-portrait, like mine, and he was coil building the pieces, and it just freed me up to the scale that I do now. I think I'll even, this is the how I'm doing them, I'll show you. When I get accused of not being a ceramic potter, I always go, these are coil-built pots. And I start with the footprint. I just cut, so all these shapes at the bottom is this flat piece and hollow, and then I'm coil building them up. Sometimes, I mean, when I did the rabbit, I was doing a workshop, and I was just trying to work fast. Some of the devices that show up are simple things like doing ears as an extra body part, and if you put yourself in a rabbit suit or a bird costume, you eliminate the ear. Then you just make these big ones on the top, because the ears are hard. I realized too, that I was gonna say, I always made myself with my eyes closed and barefoot. I can't explain the bare feet, but I realized all of these, their eyes are open, which I think is, we'll have to go into therapy on that one. But they started out separate, because I was just trying to work fast. You eliminate the arm, you just got this figure. You can do a demo in a day and show that. The clown, some of you may know Playfest and Billy Ray Mangum. We have a long friendship. He had done naked clowns, and he was like, oh, Johnson, you'll never sell a naked clown. I was just like, just watch. So I built this naked clown. He's based on a figure. I have a real interest in printmaking, and Jose Posada was a Mexican printmaker, I think in the 20s. And he has a clown figure, not naked, but he had the little hat and this, and so just again, there it was. Billy has one of those pieces. I did the naked clown. I go home, they're sitting on the counter. I went, oh hell, they're in a conversation. The poor rabbit has no arms, can't do anything, and this is where my social and political commentary come in. The stupid clown, is doing stupid things, and can't explain any more about why I refer to him as him, obviously with a female body, but that's my Donald Trump. And it just, there it went. The conversation went from there. I believe I did the tree the next. I was watching NPR, something about deforestation. I went, the clown's cutting down the tree, the rabbit can't stop him. The rabbit was starting to kind of get control. She's in the boat, but he's got the paddles. This is trash from outside of my studio, and these shells, I thought was pretty neat. I stayed at Crane House over in Lamar, and that's the beach, is this shell beach, and I had kept the seashells, so that was the good, conscious rabbit and the nasty, evil clown. And it went to then the birds. I'm a bird watcher, so I'm always kind of adding that in. I had tons of chickadees over the winter, one of my favorite birds, so I did the rabbit. The birds like the rabbit. But it was a plate I saw at the Menil collection in Houston. I can't remember the artist's name, but kind of in the Max Ernst era. And there's a plate, and he's holding this bird, and I just ripped it off and came home and made the clown with the bird. The interesting thing is, having been here twice now for an opening, a lot of times people don't know I'm the artist. I'm standing, I'm listening, and people are making their comments. That was pretty funny how many comments on this, what was happening. This is about my mother and father. My mother at one point decided to tell me she thought I had been conceived on Pikes Peak on a trip with my father, a business trip. He sold saws, and he would drive a car with a trailer full of these. They were skill saws, not a hand saw, but visually for me, I thought the hand saw was a better comment, so that's why the little hand saw. And my mother definitely would not have done it on a picnic table. Sure, she was in a hotel room. But I thought when I came up with the title of The Scary Beds, and then I went, oh yeah, and other stories that might be true. I picked these older pieces to come along because it's a pretty good story. So that I worked through, this is probably 3 years of work, this body of the clowns. The flames came with as a woman, and feeling for, I have a young niece in these times when Roe versus Wade was, whatever you want to call it, I was just like, this time it's done, and we are up in flames, and then of course there it went. The clown transferred to this smaller size because I was looking up Burning at Stakes, great tool, the phone, an old Italian painting, Burning at Stake, and up pops this wonderful picture of these Renaissance guys stoking somebody who became a saint, and those little figures then took on that kind of costuming from that photograph. Sometimes I make things out of clay, like these paddles. I have had at least a dozen sets of these paddles over there because I've broken more than anybody else probably putting them on. I was gonna make the stakes clay, and I think I had skewered shrimp for dinner. They were already kind of burnt. I went, oh, perp, that's the stick. So those are those things now in my mind, and those of you who work, there are times when I was younger, I used to go, oh, I'll never think of anything good again, and how am I gonna do this? But I know now, I'm confident at this age, I just tap into it and it comes. There may be dry spells, but I don't worry about it anymore at this point, because I can go from there to scary thing under the bed. I was gonna do the orange hair first, and I fell back to this Posada. The 7 Deadly Sins is also from a print of Posada, and they're flying around some evil politician. He did a lot of, there's no TV, so he was doing these playbills and newspaper stories that were the prints, and I had used the 7 Deadly Sins. I went, that's an easy one. So that was the first. The bed is really literally off of my bed. It's a metal piece iron worker in Austin had made for me. And again, you start something, these don't look anything like my original little drawing. When I picked the 7 Deadly Sins, I went, well, the print's black and white, I'm gonna make them black and white. And so the first bed, I still, I hadn't thought, how am I gonna do the quilt? I have a pretty colorful quilt on my bed. And I went, no, I just do them in black and white. And I have a book on Texas quilts, so then it was just like, they're all gonna be Texas quilts. I'm kind of obsessive pattern maker, and I could sit for hours and do those kind of repetitive patterns. So it was easy. Once I did one, I went, they're all gonna be black and white. About the same time, this is kind of tough. I had a split with a partner I'd been with 20-something years. It's too much to go into why, but he wasn't hearing me. And so that first one came then with the green ooze out of my ear. It's called Words Never Heard. So if you look close in the green ooze or word, and there was a lot of hot air. And that was the third piece. And then I went back to the one with the orange and wrapped that up. I built them, they're coil built, the little beds. It's wet clay. There's no way it could have held everything up. So I built the flat bed boards. There's the running board, just like you would make a bed. I'll just peg it with straight pins. I did all of that, I made the hole for the straight pin. And it took me twice, because shrinkage, I'm never thinking, oh yeah, they're gonna shrink. So the beds were all over the place. It took me 2 or 3 tries to get the shrinkage to match the size of the bed once I put it together. And the pillow, it all comes apart. The quilt comes off. Should be on this one. And I did my make itself underneath. When I brought it all in, I think Greg was here and Ray and Danville, and everybody was standing around. They were all out, and they were all just laying like that. They were just like, "That's a lot of naked Pat Johnson." I never saw them that way, you know. But it was kind of creepy when they were all together. But I just rolled this out as thin as I possibly could. Kept it really, really wet so I could get that. I never broke a single one of these. I'm still kind of impressed how much strength it has by that shape.
How do you hold it? How do you keep those while they dry, or like this, especially the cloth?
I went ahead and finished, so these were where I had her on the bed. I never could put this together till the very end, and after they were bisque fired. And I had it up on a piece of foam, so there was enough that I could drape it over her and kind of work it down. And then I built a little foam armature so that it would shrink and not crack. And you can see they're not there, but I still thought it was pretty good that I got them all of it. And even to do under the arm, I had to, press it under and then take them off and let them dry.
How hard is it to move your exhibition with all the?
We were talking about that earlier. It has limited my career because I have to drive them. I ship occasionally to shows, and I'll pick something like that got shipped. I had to put the boats in one box. The flat water went in another box, and the bigger, then it's a fortune because they weigh a lot. So I just finally went on satisfied with showing in Texas. I have gone out, I got in a big show in Mesa. There's an art center there. The Arkansas Art Center has a show on, do you know what that's called? So it's like every state around Arkansas. It's a pretty big show.
Yeah,
I forgot.
I did it once. Yeah,
The Delta. I was really proud to get in that. But I had to pick tile work because I could ship those, and that's what I entered, and then that's what got in. And the tiles have been pretty easy to ship. But yeah, it is limited how far I show.
What's your clay body?
I started out with armadillo clay, armadillo white, and longhorn red, longhorn white, longhorn red. Because again, getting out on my own, I got an electric kiln, and I fired 04 bisque and 06 to glaze. And some of this, because I went back to the shiny, I had kind of given it up. They just appeared to me, I never wanted to glaze those. I saw them flat. And I was using, because I did a lot of school residencies, used to Texas Commission of the Arts, would have this artist in residence, and they would send you out. And I'd buy those big jars of Amoco because the kids could could use them and they're not toxic. So I had stuck with the Amico velvets, and it was always, before I put them in the kiln, I liked that matte. So luckily, they came along with the Amico velvet, and it's a flat matte. You can glaze it, it's really versatile. And, but it's a second firing, and always with this work, it's time and how long they take me. So these are all painted with casein paint. It was just a tip from somebody who was repairing a piece, and she said, oh yeah, this was a taxidermist, said he used this just to touch up, because it matches that same flat matte. I went, what the hell, I'm painting the whole thing. That saves me a firing, so I bisque, and then I'm painting them with the casein. And it's an ancient form of paint. Chinese used it. It gets hard as a rock over time. My first work, I tried watercolor. First person who had any brain said, oh, that's gonna fade. I went, oh, I planned that, you know? And I tried acrylic. I didn't like the plasticity. Jack Earl was using oil paint. God bless him for that, because it was a mess. I had it all over me, it just wouldn't dry, and that's not, and so when the casein came along, because you can go back over, which in glazing a lot of times there's a point where you're done. And so that's been a real, it gives me that satisfaction too of wanting to be painterly, and that part of painting and artist in me. But when I did the beds, I went, they are so fragile, and I don't want anybody to think they're made of something else but ceramic. I went, they're gonna be shiny, because I want people to know that how hard they were to make and make them shiny. And I'm pleased with them being that way. And again, my life fills the work. It was fun last night to talk to people who saw what. Several of y'all are somehow all in therapy, or are therapists. There must be a lot of therapy needs. And 3 or 4 people say, oh, I'm a counselor, I'm a therapist. And they all brought different things to the table on what it was about. And I went, no, I wasn't thinking that. But it is there somewhere. And so when I went from these pieces at the time, was that these have been done since January. I had this idea of this little stage set. I actually I live in rural Texas out on some acreage, and was outside one morning watering, and in my nightgown and flipped these exact shoes. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cold. And I looked down, and there was a a coral snake across just going right across my hand. I still remember I was off the ground. I don't know, but I was levitating, and that's where I went, oh, it was like a dance. I said, oh, I can see myself on this stage dancing these coral snakes off my feet. The box I had to do twice. I couldn't figure out, she's pegged through the back, she's loose. This is built separate, this is built separate, all these come. I had to finally adhere the curtains, and I did the curtain because I had done the quilts. I was really into this spin, how can I make this, I was really proud of the curtains. A little obsessive patterning, but it took on a whole nother meaning, because by then my family had stepped in. My brother and sister came down. My brother stayed a month to help me come through this end of my relationship. So I decided that the theme is confidence and courage. You know, I was courageous with those damn snakes, and now I was going to be courageous with my life. But the little figures are, this is my sister's 3rd grade, I think, picture, and my brother, and then on the back is my beloved dog, Bowie, who's now my home mate and bed mate, and he's on the back. So it took on a different image. This was off of a book cover I was reading, this patterning, and again I was like, oh, I went over the wall with the dot patterning. But then again, when I built this one, put that little skim across the trim across the top. It looks like one of those churches in New Mexico. So I went in the house, found a book on it's a church out in Chimayo, and I just copied the altar piece off of that pattern. And again, because I was loving this, trying to get this fluidity of the clay that's hard when you fire it and to make the curtains. It was a bit of a nightmare. It changed totally. I suddenly went, well, how do I carry what was happening with the beds into this next series? And the water, which again, this is, my therapist is gonna have to go through that. I don't know where my interest in water and how many ways you can see I have at least 3 different versions, and in there of how I visualize the dimensional of the water. And the quilt was the kind of stepping stone between these pieces and the beds. I hadn't put any of it together. The bed has 2 pegs down into the water, but she was just floating. I thought her hands would hold it on there, and the quilt too, just by the weight. And as I was photographing it to get it to case base soon enough, I broke the whole thing. It slid off, she slid off. This did not break. Again, I'm thinking there's something about the structure of that curve, but she broke both of her hands and her feet. I glued it, photographed it, and then I made a whole new one out of it and realized I had to peg her. So in her belly button now, she's pegged and this is pegged into but this lifts off. There's a dowel up through it. Because it's the tacking even if I'm just driving it. I couldn't have this sticking out. So this comes off the bed and the water breaks down, and this is just a flat. These are all slab. The little figures, I just make like the cigar shape. I usually run a dowel up through her because there's a certain thickness in firing. And it's just the torso, I make the legs, the arms, and the hands are the last, and I'll just work on the hand. And I can spend hours.
How are the drapes?
I have wonderful 2-part epoxy. So I made them separate. Again, I had to adjust for, shrink, the whole thing's shrinking. And I just couldn't see it as one piece. So they dried separately. I put them up. This was, kind of shifted around to get her behind the curtain, and that was, because this is actually holding this in place once you set this down. And it didn't fall off. I came back in, Michelle was like, okay, we have museum putty. I went around anything that moved.
Since listening to your story, transitioning from kind of an old life to a new life, I read this piece, and I did when I saw it initially, as a train birth. One of those train, and, someone sits, stays up front, and with the movement of the curtains, it's like the train is moving, it's like life is moving forward. And I don't read that as water.
Give me goosebumps.
I don't read that as water, I just read it as part of the birth of the train, I love the idea of it being, one of the Mexican, kind of, retablo-like pieces too, but I just read that as a train birth. You're moving forward, girl.
Well, I'm glad to see this room is really full of women. I appreciate the femininity in these guys back here. But that's one thing it's a universalness, and somehow always in something, a woman will see something and bring it to the table, and it may not have been anywhere close to what I was at, but there it is, and that's pretty wonderful, because I feel that way. I'm on that train.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Yeah.
And I saw it as the waves pitching the bed around.
Well, that was it. I called it the drowning, because I was
Wow,
drowning.
interesting. I don't see any of
I
that.
got the picture, guys.
And the other one, it's always like, well, what's that man doing? I mean, these, I think, are pretty feminine, but I'll be standing somewhere and I'll go, really? A man? Or they'll not see that they're all self-portraits. But, yeah, and about the time I was like, you know, how much Pat Johnson can you do? But I'm in it now. I mean, it's just, I mean, the story, I can't be a blonde or something, you know, they gotta be me, so. And I've gotten it down pretty good. I can whip out my face. Everyone says I make my nose too big, but it's something that is just an exaggeration. I tried once, well, when I worked with Jack Earl, he was all about the, you know, whatever, the divine split, you know, and I've tried really hard to do the proportions right, and I'm not doing that. I had a commission to do a bust. My county is Fayette County, and LaGrange and Fayetteville. It's all named after Marquis de Lafayette, who never came to Texas, but the pioneers from, I think, North Carolina brought the name to Fayette County. So the county asked me to do a bust of Lafayette for the courthouse. And one day I came out, I was still with my partner, and it's a life-size bust, and it said Marquis de Johnson underneath it, because I couldn't get past the Johnsonness that I've been doing. Finally, I started watching French films to get, because there's not really a good, they're portraits of Lafayette, but, and young and old, but they never look like the same man, so I had to take like the receding hairline, and I did not have a side profile, which makes all the difference in doing portraiture. And finally someone found an etching of him from the side, and I finally got the nose and the lips down, and he became the Marquis de Lafayette. Not so much.
Did you visit the Painted Churches much in that area?
Oh yeah, very close.
Because I see some coloration in a way.
Yeah, I did a brochure for them there first when the chamber realized they had a tourism thing, and they drove me out, and we went from church to beer hall, church to beer hall. So that was my tour, because this is central Central Texas. There's a lot of beer drinking going on out there. But yeah, I've used it in my artwork over the years, so yeah. And I love going out to New Mexico. My family had a house out near Taos growing up, and going to those churches. I've got dirt from Chimayo in a little jar at home. So travel influences, you know, a lot.
Regional and, yeah.
Would you talk a little bit about the police before?
Well, that's, I like to draw, and so always, that's underglazed pencil, and, I remember the ceramic artist, she's out in New Mexico. I was with my grandmother, and, this woman was drawing on clay, and I called her, and she said, oh no, there's a pencil. I hadn't learned that in school either. And so, because of the tile work, I fall back to the drawing, the piece on the wall in there. It's actually done with underglaze. But these are all objects that are in my house. I've been in a show at Women in the Work, and it was Vicki Meek, who's wonderful, and African American. I was the token white girl. There was a woman from Iran who's teaching at Texas Tech. They were from all over the world. Nigeria, she was building these huts referencing her homeland. And when we did a talk, and I was going, you know, I grew up on a suburb of Houston in a white family, and you know, I'm a melting pot. I kind of diminished myself, and Vicki came up to me, oh, just don't do that again. You know, you're bringing a whole wealth of your own self and knowledge, and just because you don't have a straight line to Nigeria or something doesn't mean you're lesser of something. And so as a thank you, I did this little drawing, because I grew up going to grandmother in Gulfport, Mississippi, where the little pickaninny was out in front of the praline shop, and I still have her as a souvenir. And my mask is from, it's it's West Africa, and I can't think exactly now where it's from. So I did that, and I went, oh, I just did it on a piece of paper and as a thank you, and sent it to her, and I went, oh, I could go around and put these combinations of views of my house, and that's the pun on my view, but literally 2 views of things in the house. And my dad had brought me the little doll from China, from Chinatown, I think in San Francisco. Friend had been to China, brought me my Mao. I had the little Mexican folk art piece, the German statue of Siegfried my mother had collected, and I just went, oh, there you go. And
Is it on rice paper? What is it, the surface?
it's clay.
Oh, oh my God.
Oh, yeah, they're,
Okay, wow.
yeah, because it's kind of a joke. One time I had a tile mural, and the woman just wanted to buy this middle piece out of it. She goes, I'm gonna make a trivet out of it. I was just
Oh my
furious. These are paintings, and it's also, there's a point with tile, you can't be the same price as a painting. For some reason, you can't get above that. And so I was just being, show you, and so I started, the tiles are all hung with the wire, just like they're a painting. And I thought, I'm gonna build these bigger kind of canvases,
Yes, I love them.
and they're just boxes, and then I figured out a little device to hang them. And in the midst of all this, Armadillo White, they mined out the flint and changed the formula, and I'm still not pleased. It's like working, it's just, they keep giving it to me free, because I've been complaining about it. And I had already started the pieces, and you'll see this is a little different white. That's the new, once I started it, but I didn't do them all at once, and I didn't come to the idea of that it'd be a series. And it's slightly different color, it shrinks different, because I measured them, and it doesn't, and I'm kind of enjoying it more, but it's just different. And they're aware of it too. They're not, they've changed the recipe probably twice over this last year. I see you shaking your head. The red, I don't think had the same, they didn't change because they didn't need the, and it was interesting because I found out the mine is somewhere out in West Texas, and Dow Tile bought that mine. There's still the material there. They're shipping it to Mexico, making their tile down there, and then shipping it back. But this is where, because I flunked chemistry of glazes twice, and clay materials, that's never been kind of why I'm doing it. I mean, I admire people who work to get a perfect red glaze, handmade, but I want it coming in a jar.
Where do you get those pencils, the underglaze pencils, right?
Yeah. They're a Mako product. A few years ago, they're coming from Italy. I used to buy the pencils, they were like $1. They're like $10 now, and I can go through a black on one more piece of work. There's a pastel in a little box in assorted colors, and I do the line work, but the bill is all done with the pastel. I have one red left, and I have to spit on it to get the red to come off. Armadillo has them in the boxes, but Ceramic Store in Houston carries them, so you can buy just one individual pencil. And there was a whole period where all the work was pencil, was killing my hands. I got a pretty good, writer's bump here from holding, and always conscious of how long can I do this. I quit doing the pencil plus, they got to be $10, and I went back to doing, with an underglaze, but there's still, it's just, these never appeared to me as a dimensional, and I just immediately knew I was gonna do it in the pencil.
Cause the little portraits that you did you do those with the pencil? The portraits here of your.
No, that's done with a
That
really
is?
tiny paintbrush.
Oh, wow.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So Pat, is there like a matte glaze over the pencil?
Right, yeah, it's the, and this again, I don't know, I've talked to a lot of people, but if you get up close, it pulled, and then I embraced it, cause I went, I love it. It has this kind of antiquity where it bubbled up. All I can think is that the dust of the, pastel caused a resistance, cause it did it pretty much on every one of them. Just has not quite as much, cause I think by then I realized I was trying to blow it off. But, you know, it's one of those things you gotta love clay and hate it. And then you just go, hey, I planned that, that was really good.
What did you bisque, these pieces that you use the casing on?
Oh, four.
Oh, for,
Yeah, I got a big, huge kiln in town, my studio in town, but when I'm working at home, which is just a delight, this is my plan of aging in place, cause I can go out, I never go back to town anymore. Fayetteville has grown, it used to be me, a grocery store and a bar, and now it's a fancy restaurant, me, and 3 shops selling candles and pillows, and it's not as desirable to go back, and I don't anymore. If I come home, I'm home. But now, I toddle out to my studio with a glass of wine and my pajamas, work till 10 o'clock, I'm getting ready for Clay Fest, so, to be able to work longer and more pleasant, I can wear whatever I want. Someone else, I was on a pair of shorts and made my bra the other day, and a friend stopped by, I've never seen you with so few clothes on. I said, nobody's coming out here, I don't care what I look like. So I'm excited about the train and working at home, and I have a little tiny kiln with somebody's mother, and I think the kiln's older than I am, and it's about, it's like 13 by 13. So I noticed my electric bill going up at home. I thought it was my new air conditioning, and I realized, no, I'm like firing 3 or 4 times a week now in this little kiln. And next week when I get home, I got an electrician coming out to rewire. I have a little bigger, newer kiln. I can probably do twice as much in it. And I'm gonna make my studio in town. This is, I have 3 friends who've moved out who all are also working in clay, and we're gonna make it a little cooperative. It's gonna be my Barry Brown on the square. They're thrilled because they were doing it anyway. I'd let them come in when I wasn't there, and we're just gonna have days when they can use it. Gives me a little income. I can keep the building. I own the building in town, and gives me credibility in this community. It's not giving it up yet, but I thought it was a good idea to share it with friends, and I can work at home.
It's good to have a community.
Yeah, when I moved out, the architect who enticed me out, this was in '76, and there were about 12 of us who came, architects. I was doing architectural ceramics for them, and those of us who are still alive from that original 12 are still really close. Everybody moved but me. I just stayed. It really suited my style. My family's in Houston. I'm literally halfway between Austin and Houston, so it was a good mix. Over the years, I've had a gallery representation, and then they either closed or died, or I went on. Again, now it's not quite as important to me as a young artist. Making the cover of Art in America is like long gone.
Somebody asked me, was your work featured on the cover of a ceramic? No, it wasn't? Okay, somebody was asking me that, and I swear I've seen those rabbits before somewhere, or in a ceramic magazine, is what he thought.
I'm trying to think, Last Tire did a story on them, and when the show at Women in Their Work, we got tons of publicity on that, and there was some newspaper reviews, that sort of thing.
So
No,
I'm sorry.
No.
Nowadays, do you go looking for exhibition space, or do they come looking for you?
well, that's the good thing. This is where I sell young art. It is on a prime example. If you stick with it long enough, they'll finally go, hey, there's Pat Johnson. That's my story with Vicki Meek. I still can't remember the day she called me. I was like, how the hell did you find me? And I had had a show at Galveston Arts Center that year that never even opened because it was pandemic, and they had 2 hurricanes. But she trusted that curator there, and she was just going back to these art centers that she knew about and saw the work. And I remember we did a Zoom because you couldn't meet. She was doing studio tours, and I walked her around town and into my studio, and yeah, and I got the phone call from Michelle, you know, yeah. I'm working on, I got Rockport Art Center on my future. I'm hoping 2025 I'll get myself back down here. I still beat the bushes. I'm gonna enter, jury shows are still something I'm into. Denton, where I went to school, has a show, materials and something, and I'm gonna enter it. Deadline is December. San Angelo has been, if ever you're in April, there's this huge, every other year it's national, international, and then off years it's Texas artists. And it's like walking into a Ceramics Monthly to see who's doing what. And that's a jury show. But yeah, again, like having a big show like this a year, one a year is not, it's just enough for me. And I'm sticking with Clay Fest just because it's so much fun.
Have you ever done the Del Mar, the King Gallery National Show?
No.
No?
I may have entered it, and I was looking back at my resume. I was in a show here that Luis Jimenez jury. I'm thinking it was almost kind of prelim to what you did with the OSO. It was an environmental show here.
In the Wild Gallery?
I think so. I didn't make it down. It was a small enough piece that I shipped it. I'm always sorry because I really admired him, and I eventually did get to meet him, but, yeah, and I'll still enter and not get in something. I've won San Angelo, and last year I didn't get in. I was so mad. Just go, it's a juror. I usually pick a show that I know the juror somehow, or because I'm thinking they're familiar with the work. But, yeah, it's been nice to get those phone calls. And I always start the year going, God, I don't have anything. And then you call, and it was so timely because I was feeling pretty down.
Oh, good.
And yeah, I want to thank y'all again.
Do some of those galleries kind of censor you?
Well, not here. I kept waiting for the phone call. I've had a show where there were children involved, and the director came in and draped a piece every day with a tablecloth.
Is it a naked clown?
I wasn't even. It was a drawing actually. It was a series called Zeus Goes to Mahowski. I had made a trip to Greece, so it was that classic Zeus, and I put him out in front of all these little, like the old cafe in town. So there's this big neon sign. He's throwing a plate of fried chicken or something like that, and he has a walked off pee-pee, you know, it's not even there. It's art history, but she covered it up every day.
Wow.
I love that you have your dog in this piece, and over here also the buoy.
Buoy. And I had finished that, and someone said, oh, you need your dog standing by you. So I went back real quick, and there's Buoy.
Helps fill that space too.
Yeah, it really made the piece. It was kind of empty, and then,
When in doubt, put a dog in it.
yeah, there you go. That's a man who knows. Yeah. Dog or bird.
Yeah.
Well, no, thank y'all very much.
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to let y'all know also Bay Biennial is happening right now, or this weekend, and at noon, from noon to 5 o'clock, they have demonstrations out at Ann and Corpus Christi.
And it's